The studio lights burned bright over the set of The View, and the air carried a nervous energy that even the camera crew could feel. It wasn't just any guest walking into the building that morning, it was Sylvester Stallone. Hollywood legend, global icon, and one of the most recognizable faces on Earth. He'd been invited to promote his new film and talk about the upcoming release of a memoir that promised to reveal the man behind the muscles. But no one, not the producers, not even Joy Behar, could have predicted how this interview would end. The live audience clapped as the theme music faded. The camera zoomed in on Joy Behar's familiar face as she smiled into the lens. Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest needs no introduction. Please welcome the one and only, Sylvester Stallone. Applause thundered through the studio as Stallone stepped onto the stage. Dressed sharply in a tailored navy suit, sunglasses resting in his hand, he smiled with that classic mix of confidence and humility. He shook hands with Whoopi, waved to the audience, and sat down. Joy leaned in, her smile wide but calculated. "So, Sly, may I call you Sly?" He chuckled. "Sure, everyone does. Even my mom did, when she was mad." Laughter rippled through the crowd. The atmosphere felt light. For a moment, it seemed like it was going to be one of those easy, nostalgic interviews, the kind that made everyone feel good. They talked about Rocky, Rambo, and his decades in Hollywood. They even laughed about the early days, the auditions, the failures, the nights when he sold his dog to buy food. But then, Joy turned the page in her notes. Her smile faded just slightly. The tone shifted. "Now, Stallone," she began, "you've been open about your tough past, but there's been a lot of talk lately about your personal life. Your divorce, your relationship with your daughters, even rumors about your temper. Are you really the calm guy you say you are?" The air grew heavy. Whoopi glanced at her, sensing the change. Stallone's posture stiffened. "Joy, you know, I've lived a long life. I've made mistakes, sure. But I've also learned. The guy who fought in the ring on screen, that's not who I am at home." Joy smirked. "But people say the fighter never really leaves, right? I mean, you've had quite a few explosions over the years." The audience murmured. Stallone's jaw tightened. He laughed it off, at first. "I think everyone loses their cool sometimes. Even you, Joy." The crowd chuckled, but Joy didn't. "Oh, trust me, I can handle myself. But when you start throwing things or yelling at people, that's a different level. What do your daughters think of that?" Whoopi shifted uncomfortably. "Joy." But Stallone interrupted, his voice lower now, calm but with that unmistakable edge. "You know, I came here to talk about my movie, about life lessons, about resilience. Not to relive the worst moments of my private life." Joy leaned forward. "But don't you think the public deserves to know the real you? The man behind the legend?" His eyes narrowed slightly. "The public already knows me, through 50 years of work. Through every movie, every fight scene, every story I've told. I don't need to bleed on television to prove I'm human." The crowd clapped at that, a wave of support that Joy clearly hadn't expected. "Still," she pressed on. "But you wrote in your book that you weren't always the best husband or father. Don't you think it's fair to talk about that?" Stallone took a long breath. "It's fair to talk about it, when the intention is real. But when the goal is to stir drama or headlines, that's not conversation. That's exploitation." The atmosphere turned electric. Whoopi cleared her throat. "All right, let's move on." But Joy cut her off. "No, I think this is important. Because a lot of men hide behind their success. You were tough in movies, but maybe not so tough in real life, huh?" That was it. Stallone stared at her for a moment, silent. Then he leaned forward, his tone calm but sharp enough to slice the air. "You know, Joy, I've faced worse people than you in a boxing ring. But at least they were honest about throwing punches. The audience gasped. He unclipped his mic. I've had enough of this. Joy blinked, caught off guard. Wait, you're leaving? Yeah, Stallone said, standing up. You invited me here to talk, not to be ambushed. I've fought too hard in life to waste time on disrespect. The camera followed him as he stood, shaking Whoopi's hand firmly. Thanks, Whoopi. You're always fair. Whoopi nodded solemnly. Respect, brother. And then, he walked off. The audience erupted into stunned murmurs. Joy tried to recover, forcing a smile that didn't quite land. Well, I guess that's one way to end an interview. Whoopi glared at her. You went too far, Joy. You really did. Cut to commercial. Behind the scenes, chaos. Producers rushed to figure out how to spin it. Stallone's team was furious. Joy's co-hosts avoided her in the dressing room. Within hours, clips of the walkout were all over social media. Hashtag Stallone walks out, hashtag The View meltdown, hashtag Joy Behar drama, all trending globally. Some defended Stallone, calling him a class act who refused to take disrespect. Others sided with Joy, arguing that tough questions come with fame. By evening, late-night hosts were already joking about it. But for those who had seen it live, it didn't feel like a joke, it felt raw. Real. 2 days later, Stallone released a short statement: I respect journalism when it's fair and focused on the story, not the spectacle. I stand by what I said. Joy, meanwhile, offered a half apology on the next episode of The View. You know, sometimes I push a little too hard, she said, smirking. But hey, that's television. The audience laughed, but it felt uneasy. Whoopi didn't smile. She looked tired. Behind closed doors, ABC executives reportedly held an emergency meeting. The ratings were through the roof, but the backlash was brutal. Some called for Joy's suspension. Others wanted to invite Stallone back for a reconciliation episode. He declined. Instead, he was spotted 2 nights later, leaving an upscale Italian restaurant in Beverly Hills, relaxed, wearing his signature black leather jacket. When paparazzi shouted questions, he simply smiled and said, sometimes, walking away is the best fight you'll ever win. That line went viral. Millions shared it. It became a quote printed over photos of Stallone with the words, "Real strength is silence." The story dominated tabloids for weeks. Joy Behar tried to downplay it, saying she'd been misunderstood. But the internet had already decided, Stallone had handled it like a champion. Weeks passed. The noise died down. Yet, the moment stayed etched in viewers' minds, the day Hollywood's toughest man refused to play the game anymore. And as the lights of New York dimmed over the skyline, the luxury sequence began. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided through the city streets, its chrome edges reflecting the city lights like molten silver. Behind it, a sleek Bentley Flying Spur hummed quietly, windows tinted dark. A Ferrari Roma idled beside them, its red body glowing under the street lamps. Farther back, a Maybach S-Class and an Aston Martin DB11 joined the slow-moving convoy, each car a symbol of legacy, discipline, and control. Inside the Rolls-Royce, the camera focused on Stallone's reflection in the tinted glass. The man who once fought imaginary battles on screen was now the embodiment of calm, living proof that sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. The city lights blurred into gold streaks as a voiceover came in, soft and cinematic. In a world full of noise and confrontation, power isn't about who shouts the loudest, it's about who knows when to leave the stage. The convoy rolled on through Manhattan, engines purring like a symphony of strength and silence. The screen faded to black, and the voice of Story Vault returned. In every fight, there's a moment that defines you, not when you swing, but when you decide to walk away. This is that moment. The outro music swelled, slow and powerful, a mix